Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, an A-rig is a great wintertime bait. It's a great search bait. It's a great bait to use in cold weather, whether it be late fall, wintertime, early spring. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I did an Underwater Wednesday episode where I showed you some retrieve options for throwing an A-rig. Today, we're in the tackle room, but I'm going to show you a couple of ways to tweak that A-rig to get you maybe a few more bites and to give you some help in determining how you're throwing that A-rig. Stick around, guys. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher, and the Alabama rig is what we're talking about today. Hey guys, I know we say this all the time, but before we get into talking about the A-rig, if you wouldn't mind, hit the subscribe button, the notification button. Be a part of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. Check out our videos. We put them out Monday through Friday every week. We'd appreciate you joining in. All right, let's get talking about this. Like I said, I did that Underwater Wednesday episode a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't seen it, go back and check that out. I'll make sure to put a link to this at the end of the video so that you can go back and check that one out. One of the biggest tips that I talked about in that video was your retrieve for when you're throwing an Alabama rig. The key is, instead of just a steady retrieve, every once in a while you want to kind of jerk that handle, kind of steady, and then kind of just pop that handle. Just do it more in your wrist than in the rod itself. And you get what ends up happening is you get this umbrella to kind of fold and expand, fold and expand. And like I said, go back to that video. You can see it happen in the water. And that's a great tip. And that was the biggest thing that we got out of that underwater video. That and sweeping your rod tip to keep that bait along the bottom. But today I want to talk about a couple more things. And the biggest one that I wanted to point out that we didn't talk about in that video is how to get the fish to key in on that center bait, this center bait here. What you can notice here in what I did, I use the Core Tackle tush hooks as my swim bait hooks. So you can see that I've got them, and I've got all of the baits in the surrounding cluster, the 4 around in this color here. But what I've done with the center bait is just changed it a little bit. You can see that I've made it a little bit different than the surrounding baits. So I've given the bass a target to go to in the center of this bait ball that I have here that I'm throwing. That is my first recommendation. Put something a little bit different in the center. That gives them a target. Now, you might want to, if you had something like this, let's say I didn't have this color, I might put a little chartreuse on the tail of that one. I don't want to go completely different. I don't want it to look like a different fish altogether. I don't want to go, minnow imitators and then all of a sudden having it look, like a perch or something like that. But just something a little bit different to make it stand out a little bit. And again, I might take this and I might still put like a little chartreuse on the tail. But my first tip is give that center bait just something a little bit different. That gets the fish, the bass, to key in on that center bait. When you're doing that, you've got a lot more opportunities for them to get hooked in one of these other ancillary baits that you've got going on. Let's talk real quick about rod and line just to make sure. Obviously, I think everybody knows when you're throwing an A-rig like this, a big umbrella rig like this, you want a big stout rod. I'm talking about 7 foot. Any rod, quite honestly, I use my rods that I would be frog fishing with. I want a big stout rod. Line, I'm talking about 20-pound fluoro. Again, you don't want to be breaking off an expensive umbrella rig. You want to have enough line to be able to, pull that out or horse that fish in. So rod, big heavy rod, heavy line, 20-pound line. Those are my recommendations for that. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is pay attention to which bait it is that's getting bit when you're fishing. So you're going out, you're crushing them on an A-rig. Where are they ending up hitting that bait? Are they hitting in the center? If that's the case, you've done a good job of making that center bait look a little different than the other ones. Are they hitting on the bottom ones? If they're hitting on the bottom baits, that's a clue for you that they might be coming up to hit your umbrella rig. And quite honestly, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But keep in mind at that point, what you don't want to do, you might want to slow your retrieve or bring your retrieve down a little bit, but not too much. If they're hitting just the top baits, that might be an indication that you want to bring it up a little bit. Bass are more likely to feed up than they are down. And so if I'm coming over them, yep, there's a likelihood that they might hit here. If I'm not having a real good day, but I do get one bite and it's here, that's likely that what I want to do, what that's telling me is get that retrieve to be a little bit higher than where that fish was. So if you can pay attention to where the bass are hitting on your umbrella rig and where they're getting bit, and again, one fish isn't going to tell you, but if you're starting to see a pattern of, hey, I'm always getting bit on the bottom ones, you're probably riding above the level of where those bass are suspended in the water column. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to your different color in the center. Again, I have a tendency to kind of like to use the core tackle tush rigs. That, I don't know, I think that's just a matter of personal preference. And by all means, go back and check that Underwater Wednesday episode that we did to check out those different retrieves for attracting more bass throwing your umbrella rig. This is the time to do it, guys. Either now or as springtime gets closer, an A-rig is going to be a fish catching monster for sure. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you again tomorrow on another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.